name is Tom Eccleston. I'm the assistant headmaster for enrollment management at the Hill, and we're happy everyone's here tonight to join some of the admissions staff. But we'll wait for more introductions once we get some more people online. All right, everybody. Well, while the participant numbers keep going up, again, my name is Tom Eccleston. I'm the assistant headmaster for enrollment management. We're so excited that you can join us tonight. This is I think our fourth virtual event of the year. Not as themed sort of as our past ones. This is sort of a night to chat with the admissions office at Hill. So I'm joined by my good friends and esteemed colleagues in the office. Just a little introduction on myself and also for the agenda tonight. In the past, as I just mentioned, they have been themes. We've had an academic and college counseling theme and athletics and arts, and we're going to do one more in January. We'll do another event in January that will sort of be a general theme. But tonight, again, we'll be talking, hopefully, if you have questions about the admissions process, but also just about Hill in general. And hopefully you recognize all of us if many of you on the call tonight have already interviewed. But I've been at Hill. This is now my 22nd year at Hill. I'm also a proud Hill graduate, class of '87, and I'm a Hill parent. My daughter Tatum graduated 2 years ago, and I have another daughter, Tanner, who's a sixth former at Hill currently. So I'm also a proud Hill parent, but also have some good perspective on life at Hill from a parent spectrum. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to let them introduce themselves. And then I want to talk a little bit about how we've been doing this year at Hill, and then talk a little bit about the admissions timelines. I want to hand it over to Mr. Bala to talk about financial aid quickly, but then we just want to open it up to questions. And I'll start that now by saying, if you want to type in some questions, type it in the Q&A. And we'll take your questions from there. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Bala to introduce himself next.
All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. Tom said, my name is Chris Bala. I'm one of the senior associate directors here at Hill. I also head up financial aid. So those are my titles and duties here in the office. Outside of the admission office, just to give you some sense, I've been here for 14 years. I spent 2 years as a student. So like Tom, I'm also a graduate of the school. But 14 years now, I've been at school. I've always worked in this office. I have been 10 years now in a dormitory. So I live on campus with my wife and 3 kids, the oldest of whom is coming through the process. He might be out there tonight watching. So yeah, we've got that going on for our family. I am currently the boys ice hockey coach. I'll transition into a new role starting next year. But I've done a bunch of different things here, advisor, coach a little baseball, but happy to answer questions. And again, thanks so much to everybody for being with us tonight.
Hi, I'm Dana Hunter. I am in my 20th year at Hill. At 25, I get my picture on a wall. So that's why, I'm going to stick with it for 5 more years at least. I serve as the Associate Director of Admission. My focus is on multicultural recruitment at the Hill. So if you're involved in any specific program, you probably will have spoken to me about that. I lived in the dorm for 15 years. I got rewarded with a house this past summer. I'm also very lucky to be the advisor to Tom's daughter, who is in her 6th form year, and I'm going to miss her so much. I also serve as the co-dean with Amanda, Mrs. Dougherty, and we are the co-deans of the class of 2024.
Dane, good job. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Amanda Dougherty. I'm a senior associate director of admission. I've been here for 19 years, always in the admission office. Like Dana, spent time in the dorm in one of our 9th grade dorms, 3rd form dorms, and one of our 4th form dorms with 10th graders. And now I do live in a house on campus, and I get to spend my Friday nights with my 5th and 6th form boys in upper school. I've been a part of the field hockey and lacrosse programs throughout my years here. Currently, I'm a JV lacrosse coach and an advisor. My husband and I live here with our 3 young kids. And yeah, Dana, super excited this year. So each form at Hill gets 2 faculty members to be their advisors, sort of an extra layer of support. And Dana and I are particularly proud we're the first all-female pair. We just like to do everything together. So we stay together for that. So it's exciting. It's been a challenging fall to get them all together, right? But we're trying our best. Back to you, Tom.
Thanks, everybody. Just a sort of a program note, as I mentioned tonight, again, obviously you have members of our staff here to answer questions about the process, but we're happy to answer questions about Hill life in general. Please populate the Q&A section and we'll answer those questions. We'll do a couple live questions. If you'd like to jump on the screen and ask a question live, we'll do that. Just raise your hand. Our past presentations, as I mentioned, we've done 4. This is our 4th one so far this year. And we've put the 3 previous ones on the website, on the admissions page of the website. So you can see those recorded, those past sessions for us. We've had a great start to the year so far. We started the school year early, 2 weeks early. And I've been telling families as I've been interviewing them that I think when a lot of schools and school districts and even private schools last April and May were trying to get through April and May, we were already planning for September, and it worked out really well. We had a really successful fall, and for those of you who don't know, we switched to block scheduling this year so we could get a lot of our academic minutes in before the winter time hit, knowing that it probably would not be a great time with COVID, and just as expected, it's true. And so when we go on our Christmas break next week, we'll actually be done with completed our entire fall and winter term, which is amazing. So we're proud of our school, really proud of our kids and how they handled everything this year. We were so glad to see them in person, but I just wanted to quickly touch on that for a little bit. And I wanted to also quickly touch on just the admission timeline. We are currently doing in-person on-campus visits. So you could either schedule your interview through Zoom, which obviously we're doing a lot of Zoom interviews this year, but we are doing on-campus visits. We've been doing them all year. Families from Pennsylvania can visit. There is a health check. Anyone visiting from outside the state of Pennsylvania, and we've sent this out to our applicants, we have to have a proof of a negative COVID test within 72 hours of the visit. So our medical director has been helping us in supporting the families visiting campus. So I just wanted to make people aware of that. In terms of timelines, and Chris will touch a little bit on the financial aid, but our application deadline is February 1st. So make sure you have everything in by then, all of the requirements, the recommendations and transcripts and testing. And then as everyone knows in the process with boarding schools, our notification date is March 10th. So that's the big day when we'll be notifying families. Our calendar is booked up. We are full for the next week and a half before we go on break for December. And our January slots are already filling up. So if you have not scheduled your interview yet, whether it be a Zoom or on campus, please do so as soon as possible. Simply, you can do that right online. We are doing Saturday morning visits and Saturday morning Zoom interviews to accommodate families, and also evening slots as well. So we've opened up evening slots on 3 of the nights during the week for Zoom interviews. So hopefully that'll help all of you families out there and make the process a little easier for you. So I just wanted to touch on those timelines and some procedures for our process. I'm going to quickly turn it over to Mr. Bala, to Chris, to talk a little bit about the financial aid deadline and timelines.
Sure, thanks, Tom. Yeah, for families who intend to apply for financial aid, while our admission deadline is February 1st, the financial aid deadline is different. It is January 15th. We do this because we require all families, both new, many of you out there tonight, but also returning families, to submit a financial aid application each year. So January 15th is the date by which your application should be complete. The application is mainly comprised of something called the Parent Financial Statement. And you access the Parent Financial Statement through a website run by School and Student Services. They are a third-party site. We at Hill, we don't house documents. We're not going to collect your information. You would submit your information into School and Student Services. And for those of you out there who might be applying to multiple schools, you can share that information with multiple schools. But the parent financial statement really is that. It's meant for parents and families to fill out. It is a financial snapshot of your family's circumstances. You will add to that. You will add to that also your 2019 tax documents and your 2020 documents as they come in. I have received a bunch of emails recently, families concerned about not having 2020 stuff done by January. Trust me, I'm in the same boat. No way I'm going to have my taxes done by then. When you get those finished, you can upload them in the spring. The 2019 tax documents, parent financial statement in by January 15th. And that's really all that you really need to take away. All of this information, including links to the school and student services website, is on our admission site. So you can access it that way. I'm happy to answer questions. My contact information is on the site. But again, it is really important for families applying for financial aid. The deadline is before the admission deadline. So January 15th, get your information into us. But like Tom said, our notification date for financial aid matches the notification date for admissions. On March 10th, you will get an answer on both fronts. If you are accepted at the Hill School, you will get a financial aid decision if you have applied. So the dates mesh up at the end, but on the front end, please know that January 15th is our deadline.
Thank you, Chris. All right, we're going to jump into questions, folks. And the first question right off the bat is, and I'm going to ask Mrs. Dougherty to answer this, is what do you think is the best thing and worst thing at Hill? That was the first question. That's a toughie.
Thanks, boss. It's funny. I feel like a lot of times people will ask me what my favorite thing is about Hill or the best thing about Hill, but I don't often get the negative part of it. So I'm going to stall on that part. Hands down, for 19 years, every single time a family has asked me this question, I say my favorite thing about Hill are the kids. It's been that way since the day I came for my interview, and every day since then. I cannot say enough good things about our kids. If anyone out there interviewed with me, you'll hear the same things. I say they're kind and down to earth and hardworking. And frankly, I just enjoy being around them, which is what has kept, well, all of us, all four of us here this long. The worst thing, I mean, I'm going to pick on COVID, okay, right? That's like a given. But so I think to me, the hardest part of this fall was that the best parts about Hill, the community time, the cheering on each other at a game, the sitting after a meal, we couldn't do all of those same things. Kids couldn't connect in dorms because you couldn't be away from your flock or your herd. So to me, that was the worst part this fall, that as a community, we couldn't connect the same way. So I'm going to take the easy way out and blame it on COVID.
That's great. All right, next question, Dana, is for you. The question is, what do you think is more important during the application process? Is it current grades or SSAT scores?
Okay, so I have to choose between the two because...
Or you could say both if you like.
Okay, for me personally, it's actually the recommendations. I want to know how your teachers truly feel about your participation in the classroom. SSAT scores are a snapshot of how you did for 3 hours on a Saturday morning or whenever you took the exam. So I probably would put that as my third, grades as my second, and recommendations as my first.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, we often talk about in our office, I think it says a lot about our culture and our community is we talk about when we're discussing students in the application process about what they would be. We always talk about shaping a class and what would they be like in our dorms or at our seated dinners or at our seated tables. So, you know, we want to build on the culture piece at Hill, and I think that's really important. Mr. Bala, the next one, and it's a sort of good segue with the SSAT. Is the SSAT optional this year? And if I don't take it, will I be disadvantaged?
Yes, been on the tip of many students' tongues in interviews recently, students asking about this. And so we're kind of answering this two ways. For younger students in particular, those applying to 9th or 10th grade, we understand for any student accessibility can be a challenge this year. We are aware of the issues that have plagued the SSAT in their at-home attempts. So we know of this, and we encourage parents and families to be patient. And if you can schedule a test, please do for those younger students, an SSAT or an ISEE test. For our older kids, right? For those of you out there applying to 11th grade, perhaps as postgraduate, it's really important for us to have a test score, right? We need to be able to share that in particular with our college office, because again, we're not just accepting you in some sort of vacuum. We're helping and figuring out where we want to help you get to next. And so for kids in 11th and 12th grade, we would love to see some testing from a current year, right? If your school does have the ability to give you the PSAT, or you can take the SAT or ACT. But if you have testing from a cycle ago, we would look at that as well. But it is really, really important for us in our evaluations to make sure that we have testing for as many kids as we can. But in terms of the disadvantage part, again, we understand that a lot of this is out of kids and out of families' hands. And so we use the other pieces like Ms. Hunter was talking about in terms of recommendations and grades and interview, right? Many of you have interviewed with some of us even. Those become really important in the process as well. So we'll do our best to learn as much about you. If you can't submit testing, you know, an additional recommendation or a way to kind of add a little bit more perspective for our office to get to know you would be super important. But hopefully that kind of paints a little clearer picture about testing this year in the process.
There's a couple questions here about future visits, and I'll just touch on those to cover all of those. So we have been doing in-person visits, as everyone knows, for the entire year. We did have to cancel visits last week, but we are back to doing them. And in the beginning in the fall, we were narrowing our visits down to just states that weren't restricted from visiting Pennsylvania. But now any state can visit. And again, and I mentioned this earlier in the meeting, if you have a negative COVID test within the 72 hours of the visit and share that with our office, we welcome you to visit campus. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Mrs. Dougherty, would you please speak to any programs that you may have to support? Sorry, would you please speak about any programs you may have to support young women's leadership capabilities? So programs that support young women leadership.
Sure. The first one that comes to mind is actually maybe one of the newer groups on campus. It's called GUTS, Girls Understanding Their Strengths. I may not know the full story about how it started. My perception is a bunch of girls, including one of the captains of our field hockey team, who's now a senior in college, so it was that many years ago, really thought that it was an area of campus maybe that wasn't as represented. And so it's a group that meets with female faculty, has speakers on campus, runs different things on the campus for the benefit of other students, along with spending time together. So that's the big one. I always say there's just certainly plenty of leadership opportunities for everybody, whether it's in the dorm, I always say in an advisory, obviously in classes. You know, every time there's a group of students together, there's a chance to be a leader. I'd like to think that there's good role models on the faculty, people that they can look up to and talk to, both male and female. I don't know who am I forgetting, you guys? Guts is the main one I'm thinking about.
Well, I think it was really important that we made sure that we had co-presidents of the schools so that both girls and boys were represented in the highest form of leadership on campus.
Absolutely. That's great. Thank you. Mr. Bala, we'll go back to you for this question. Are there blind admissions, or is FA a deciding factor in a child's admission?
Yeah, so we make admission decisions first, right? That is the way that our process works. So my financial aid committee, we don't receive files until admission decisions have been reached. I am, and I think we are very frank with families in saying that we don't have an endless financial aid budget. So we do have to put the puzzle together on March 10th. As I said earlier, we will give both admission decisions and financial aid decisions on March 10th. But we always make admissions decisions first. We're mindful of our numbers. We do a really good job of looking at past sort of experiences that our office has had in terms of how many kids we've taken and how many kids, will enroll, and then returning students all factor into that. So it's a really interesting and unique process each year, but we are committed to making admissions decisions first. We are really well resourced at this school, like anywhere. I'm sure everybody wishes we had a couple extra, awards to go around, but for us, it's admissions decisions first, financial aid decisions after that, and then we put those two things together on March 10th and communicate with families.
I'll take the next question. The question is, what's one aspect about Hill that stands out from other boarding schools? And I've always said I'm a big believer in boarding schools in general, and I think that the communities that boarding schools foster, but I think Hill's is really special and really unique. And I think Hill has a great balance in a lot of different aspects of its community. And I've always said about Hill's academic culture that as challenging as we are equally supportive. And, I think Hill gives students a great amount of independence, but balances it with great structure as well. But we really are intentional about community at Hill, and things like our seated lunches for meals in our beautiful dining room, family nights in the dorm, built-in advisor time during the week, their chapel twice a week where the whole community participates. So again, I always sort of jokingly say we do a lot of stuff together at Hill. And I do think that our community truly is tight-knit. And again, we are very intentional about it. And I think that really works well. So the next question, Dana, I'll give it to you, is what are some of the opportunities in the sciences at Hill?
Well, this year we actually opened and unveiled our new Quadrivium Center, which is our science, math, and engineering building, and it's beautiful. There's a lot of labs, a lot of places to study, meet in groups, do robotics, do computer science. So you have access to so many things in the sciences. We have a very strong STEM program, which we actually call it a STEAM program. Arts are a part of it. So there's graphic design as well as things as computer-aided drafting, things that actually come from the arts department, not just the science department. So you will have opportunities, and a part of our place-based learning at Hill is we have very strong connections with the Pottstown community, and our kids get opportunities to talk to people who professionally do these things and, try to figure out solutions to problems with them. And that's really a great part of our science department.
Thank you, Dana. If anyone wants to ask a live question, please raise your hand and we will video you in. Obviously, this is about our general admission process, and a couple questions here for our team. But Mr. Bala, what aspects of applicants does the admissions team value?
Oh man, that is a really good question. A lot of that does come out, at least initially, in interviews. We get asked, and I'm sure my colleagues would agree, we get asked similar questions. That I go back to three in particular traits that I think sort of are shared by a lot of our kids. I do think kids at the Hill School are driven. They are ambitious. They've got goals, obviously. I think it's neat that our kids balance that drive where they're not competitive with each other. I think that's a neat part of Hill. It's not about getting a higher grade than somebody else, or it's not about being better than your classmate. You can be great at what you do and celebrate others. And so balancing that drive and that competition is super important. I think kids at the Hill School understand how to work. And I know that's cliche, but we have plenty of kids, and maybe you out there can think about classmates or kids who have high expectations, but they're not willing to put the time or effort in to get there. I think kids at the Hill School understand that they need to work and put time and effort in. And coming to this campus, and I know this very well because I was a student, it doesn't just make you smarter automatically, right? You have to actually, put that time in. And I do value and love the fact that our kids get after it. They work hard. And lastly, I'll just say that our students engage. On the micro level, that looks like engagement in the classroom. Our kids are talking to teachers, they're asking questions, they're engaging one another, they're involved. And then at the macro, at a larger level, engagement looks like trying new things and getting involved in groups and clubs. it's really hard to be a specialist at the Hill School in some ways because we want you to get involved in so many different aspects. So I think those are three things that we look at and look for that are shared by most of our kids. Not sure which I would consider as more important than others. But then there's other aspects that we get to in terms of grades and recommendations. But those character traits, as Mr. Eccleston talked about, this is a people-based campus, and we spend a lot of time together. So we want to make sure that it's really it's built on the relationship. So yeah, those are some things that I've been talking about recently that I think are special here and I think are shared by our kids.
We do have a hand up, Tom, if we're ready for a question.
Terrific.
Okay, so I'm going to promote David Slavchev to speak, and he can ask his question.
Great. Hi, David.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for hosting this, first of all.
Great.
Mr. Eccleston actually did my interview and tour a bit ago. So
I remember that, David. Thanks for joining us tonight.
yeah, so I actually had two kind of short questions for you. One for any staff member that would like to answer. What's your favorite tradition at Hill that you couldn't do because of COVID? So you're looking forward to next year.
I'll take that one. And again, we talked a lot about, I actually just talked about the uniqueness of Hill's community, and Mrs. Dougherty touched on it too. But I think our seated lunches is one of the greatest traditions at Hill. And, you know, again, in our Harry Potter-esque dining room, you know, a time every day that we know we're going to come together as a faculty and student body and, you know, sit together and have a formal, proper meal. And so obviously we couldn't put 600 people, 520 students, and about 100 faculty into a dining room together this year. But we may do with it. But that's something I definitely have missed this year and can't wait to get back to it next year.
Yeah, I definitely remember the dining room that really stood out to me on the tour. And the second thing for anyone that would like to answer, it's what's one kind of event or thing you've done while working at the Hill School that you'll just never forget?
Does anyone else want to jump in for that?
The first thing that does come to mind, I have to say, is I'll give a shout out to all my field hockey teams. We won our Maple Championship. So a fair amount of our sports participate in the Maple League, which is the Mid-Atlantic Prep League. So some of our sports compete in that. Some of our sports compete at the state level. So most recently, I'm thinking about some pretty special games, you know, beating Lawrenceville, our rival, for the Maple League title. Those will be some memories, you know, that we think about for a long, long time, and that my old girls still will, you know, text and send pictures about. So that to me is the one that my memory's not very good. I'll blame that on COVID too, but I do remember those very quickly.
David, will you just share with everybody where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Washington Crossing, Pennsylvania.
Awesome.
What? That's my hometown, David.
Oh, really?
David, thank you for joining us. Thanks for hopping
Oh, yeah,
on.
thank you so much for hosting this.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we'll go back to the questions in the Q&A. Mrs. Dougherty, there's actually a couple questions about repeating a year. Sort of why would you do it? What are the benefits? Why do students do it? There's actually 2 or 3 questions about that, if you want to just touch on that in a general fashion.
Sure, of course. Well, maybe one of my better colleagues has an exact number of how many people repeat every year, but the truth is that just a fair amount of kids do it. Let's be honest, some kids start school when they're, you know, a bit young for an age. And I do think the transition, obviously in 9th grade, can be a great time. You know, if maybe you're a bit young for your class, to start in 9th grade somewhere else and then do 9th grade here. But we have students do 10th grade again, 11th grade again, and then we'll have postgraduates, you know, spending a year after they've graduated from their high school. Often people come to repeating, if they've come to it before they get here, it's often because they're young. Perhaps it's because some, you know, to be honest, people have had some tough injuries, ACL issues, concussions. Maybe something has happened in their family that's just kind of put them offline for a little bit of time. And so gaining that extra year is a really big benefit. I just think it is a no-brainer. Anyone who does it, I always say that they always just say they wish they had more time at Hill. So I think they're always really grateful that it happened. For us, you know, depending sometimes where people are coming from, perhaps academically, it makes more sense for them to start at Hill and have that extra bit of time to strengthen their foundation of classes. And to be honest, sometimes it just, when we interview a student, I think this is where, you know, our years of doing this do come into play. Sometimes we just kind of know that maybe it's in a student's best interest to get the full best experience at Hill. And that just means something different for every student. So we're happy to sort of talk to any family who's maybe even considering it and open up to that idea and talk through, you know, why it is not a great idea. Sometimes it involves our college office, our academic office, what type of classes you could take with that extra time. But we're happy to try to help people and work together on that one, because it's a great idea, but it's a big thing.
If I could add two things as well, you know, in our world here at the Hill School, repeating a class has no negative connotation, right? It doesn't equate in any way, shape, or form with a failure or some sort of negative knock. All we do in admissions is try to figure out the best place for kids to fit. And maybe in addition to some of the good points that Amanda mentioned about why, we're starting to hear a little bit that COVID is a reason why kids are going to start looking at repeating, right? For some reason or another, you know, their schooling has been interrupted. So if there's families out there and you're thinking about it, know that you're not alone. And as Amanda said, ask us questions. You know, nothing's off the table. Sometimes it could be an age thing and maybe we can or can't allow it. But there's a whole host of good reasons and definitely encourage you to think about it.
Thank you, guys. That's great. And I'll keep the horn of our office. Amanda's mentioned a few times that the experience of our office, but just between the four of us here, we're encroaching on about 90 years of combined experience with working in boarding school admissions. So yes, that's why I have the gray in my goatee.
Aging well.
Dana, the next question is, will someone speak on some of the community service opportunities at Hill?
Oh, the community service opportunities are so diverse at Hill. I think one of the best parts of Hill is community service is actually an afternoon activity, you know, just like sports or afternoon arts. You can daily go to our local community center and help tutor local students that are in elementary and middle school that need tutoring. One of my favorite stories was a PG that we had graduate. He taught chess to a kid that it would have never, ever seen a chessboard and now is in love with the game. So we do that. We also have a lot of community service that isn't a daily thing. You can be in Skate for a Cure, or you can do fundraisers and, you know, lock-ins and things like that. But I think the best part in my 20 years of Hill, I feel like we don't have to tell our kids to be of service. Our kids are just the type of kids that are kind and want to pay it forward whenever they get a chance to do so.
Hill is joined at the hip with Pottstown, our local community, and we are very supportive of the community and very involved in the community, and we make it a point. Actually, we have a very vibrant weekend activity program, and usually on the weekends, one of those or two of those activities is designated for community service. And Mr. Bala can attest to this too, but our teams, all of our athletic teams do a lot. I think each team does at least one event throughout their season. So that you're talking about 30 different programs there. So a lot of different avenues to get involved in community service. Mr. Bala, maybe you can touch on this. It's asking about how did we do sports with COVID so far this year? How did we handle athletics? And you can talk a little bit about that as a head coach.
Yeah, in general, you know, I think Hill's approach has been to have as much of a regular experience as possible. Super difficult in these times. I think Hill's wellness team has done a great job in keeping the community safe and healthy and letting our kids get into as much as possible. We did cancel a competition in the fall, but all of our teams still met. All of our teams still practiced. Our kids were working with our coaches to get better every day, you know, including, you know, sort of building those bonds, right? There's a whole separate part of team work and sort of camaraderie that goes beyond the actual practice, you know, that is being together. And that's so important, right? We've always talked about being physically distanced at Hill, but not socially distanced. And the more time that our kids can spend together, and sports is a great opportunity for that. You know, all of our extracurriculars, we're gathering in some fashion or another some of them more naturally geared towards distancing, tennis or golf, for example, and others, way more challenged by that, contact sports, invasion sports. We were able to split the fall into two halves, essentially. In the first half, all of our teams met for the fall. And in the second half of the fall, our spring teams met at the same time. And I mentioned I coached in the ice hockey program. There were even secondary opportunities for kids who play winter sports to get some training in as well. So we know it's on everybody's mind out there in terms of having that extra piece of their experience. I think coaches did a really good job in getting creative of how to run meetings and Zoom meetings and have that team sort of bonding. And then when given the opportunity to be on a field or a court or on the ice, maybe practices had to look a little bit different than they used to, but really excited to sort of see, or sort of proud, maybe, I guess a better word, to watch the coaches work with the kids, and frankly, to watch the kids do the best they can do without complaining, right? Everybody's kind of in this together. Our kids really had great attitudes, and I think overall, it was awesome to watch them be here and make the most of what is obviously a tough situation, but Hill wanted them to have that experience, so it was great that it was available.
Thank you, Chris.
Are we ready to take another hand, Tom?
Yeah, that's great. Go ahead, jump on, please.
Okay, so we have Addie Collingwood, and I call on Addie because she actually had two hands up, so she must be, her parents may be on too, so I'm going to allow Addie to talk to ask her question.
Hi, Addie. This seems one-sided, but I think Addie's another student that I interviewed. So these are not only the students jumping on that I interviewed this year.
Yes. I had two questions, and one of them is, what are like the general student-teacher relationships and students' relationships with their advisees or coaches, and like how they help support one another?
Good. Mrs. Dougherty, you want to take that question?
Ooh, that's a good one, Addie. That's a deep one, because I think it goes back to, I think Mr. Eccleston was the one who made the point about the time we spend together. So when I don't teach, right? All of us, we just work in the admission office. But when I think about my interactions with students in the sports, in the dorm, and in the advisory groups, it's about time together. And so I think the commitment Hill makes to allowing that time to happen. And then it's just, I don't know, I think it's it's the open-mindedness and like the willingness to listen and participate. I think people come to Hill. I interviewed a great local kid today who talked about, part of coming to Hill is about meeting kids from different places, right? And I know Addie's relatively close by too. So when we all sit together, we have some really great conversations because we're all from different places with different backgrounds. And so I just think that over time, relationships really develop. There's a lot of trust, a lot of love and support. And I always say that students find it in so many different avenues, right? It's your advisor, if you're a boarder, dorm parents, coaches, teachers, your debate coach, like every little bit of school here that you do, you're interacting with other students and faculty and making connections that will help and support you over your time here. So it takes effort, but the little bit you put in, you're going to get back, way more than that. And that'll make your time at Hill you'll just always feel like you have someone you can talk to, and you'll always feel connected, I think, even then after you graduate.
Okay, thank you. And then my second question is about the admissions, and like in the students for the writing part of the admissions, are there any key things you're looking for in the writing? And like, is there a really limit to how much you should write?
I'm going to let Mrs. Dougherty answer that again, because she is our writing sample guru when it comes to our committee meetings. She loves it.
You know what, Addie, your question makes me so happy. Thank you for asking it. I honestly think that the writing part is really maybe obviously it's the most fun thing to read because it's what you are sharing with us. And I always say, it is your voice in our admission committee room, right? Like if Mr. Eccleston interviewed you, he'll be there to advocate. But if none of the rest of us have ever met you, what you choose to write about and how you choose to write it says a lot. And we can tell if you don't spell check it, and we can tell if you don't review it, or if your mom wrote it for you. When we read
Don't
hundreds
have
of
your
files,
mom for you. Yeah, don't have your parents write an essay. Please don't.
we read them in batches, and you just get a feeling when you're reading them. And so I always say, if you're in 8th grade, it's okay to sound like an 8th grader, right? You don't need to sound like someone you're not. And in fact, when you sound like someone you're not, that's what we don't care for. So just speak from the heart, be honest, be who you are, tell us about yourself. That's what we want to see. And every year we're also amazed at how many kids take the 500-word suggestion, I guess, to heart. It can be less and it can be more. You know, do what you got to do, say what you want to say, do it well. And if that's in 420 words, that's okay. And if it's in 575 words, that's okay too. But just be yourself and check it over and spell check it.
Sage advice. Thanks, Addie, for joining
Thank
us.
you so much for answering my questions.
Bye, Addie.
All right, we'll get back to some of the questions in the Q&A. Dana, I'm going to throw this one next to you. It's about sort of what does college counseling look like for an incoming 11th grader, but maybe touch on that, but also just the college counseling process at Hill and how that timeline works for our kids.
Yes, our college counseling starts pretty early for students. They even get engaged as soon as sophomore year. We do courses with them. The college counseling office talks about writing essays, how to take tests, how to interview, all of those things, how to write a thank you note to a college, and all, the little pieces of the college application process. And you will meet with your college advisor starting sophomore year or fourth form year, I apologize. Fourth form year, you will meet with them one-on-one to start talking about what you're thinking about for college. Do you want a big school? Do you want a small school? How about you go visit this summer and ask those questions? And they're with you every step of the way from then on. Till the day you get your decision and you make your final decision. And they will work with you for all of the testing that you need to do. And also, one of the best parts of Hill is that in the fall, we have normally in a non-COVID situation, we'll have hundreds of schools visiting our campus for fairs and ways for kids to interview or have info sessions with many colleges and universities across the country and the world. So,
Great.
Yeah, college counseling is a great office here, and they work with our kids very closely. And I think the best part of Hill is we want you to find a school that fits you and that you can be successful at, because that's more important than, name recognition, all of that. Are you going to thrive at the place that you go next? And that's most important to us.
Thank you, Dana. That's a great question, great answer. There's a couple of questions in here about, obviously, I think with the confusion of COVID this year in our process with, not current teachers from my son or daughter's school really don't know me because I haven't been in person much. There's a couple testing questions. I'm just going to sort of answer those in general. For the teacher recommendations, if your student has only been in person for a couple weeks this year and does not really, or feels like their teachers don't know them, we are okay with getting recommendations from last year's teachers. So that is something that we actually have been telling our applicants to do. So feel free to do that if again, you've been online or virtual all year and feel like your current teachers do not know you. In terms of testing, our policy has been all year that we would love to see some type of testing. At the end of the day, it will be optional if are there no options for you to take testing, but especially for older applicants, we'd love to see an SAT or ACT or a PSAT. And for younger applicants, an SSAT, and I know they've had issues with their testing, or an IC, an ISEE. But even if you have state testing, within your public school, that's something to share with our office as well. So if you just cannot get a hold and be able to take any type of testing, just let your interviewer know that. and we will speak to you about it sort of one-on-one. But I just wanted to talk about those, a few of those questions, common themes there with all of the obstacles that COVID is presenting to us with our process, but I hope that's helpful. The next question is about grade 9 dormitories, Mr. Bala. What do they look like? Are they big, small dorms, singles, doubles? What are the bathroom arrangements like? That was part of the question too. So, but talk a little bit, and this is something I love to talk about, is actually how we do our 9th grade dorms. And I think it really works well for us, and especially the new students coming in.
Yeah, let's get right down in the weeds. Dormitory life. So we house all of our 9th grade boarding students together in small house-style dorms. There are usually somewhere maybe 50 to 60 9th grade boarding students, and we have 8 smaller house-style dorms. I have lived actually in 2 of them. I live in one right now. They have anywhere from 10 to 16 kids. And really what it's meant to be is create that cozy, intimate environment where you get to know each other and kind of build those bonds. As you get older at Hill, you actually start to move into larger buildings and maybe even live with kids in other grades. But for 9th graders, I would almost assure that you would live in a double. We might have 1 single a year, but that's something that kind of happens down the road in the summer. But when you come to boarding school, you should expect to have a roommate at the Hill School. Our office is in charge of making roommate pairs. It is one of our most favorite days. Favorite, I think, is a good word. In the summertime, when we sit down and we think about all the kids coming to Hill, because we've met you all, right? Our office has had these conversations. We've reviewed your files, and what we try to do is find kids who have similarities, but who are not exactly the same. I had a boy from New Jersey ask me the other day, what kind of roommate might I have? I said, listen, it's not going to be another boy from New Jersey. We're going to try to find kids who have some differences, maybe play some different sports or into some different activities. And then so in your first year at the Hill School, we will match you with a roommate. And then in every subsequent year, you get to pick your roommate. I know, and I can think amongst my colleagues of every now and again when we have that pair of kids who stays together their entire time at Hill, what a sense of pride we have. But it is not the norm. Most kids will choose a different roommate as they go on. But every dorm area, whether it's a small house-style dorm in 9th grade, or whether it's a large upper school dormitory, like Miss Dougherty said she works in on Friday nights, there are faculty members attached to each dorm or each hall. They act as the dorm parent. Each area has a set of prefects, kind of older students who maybe act as like older sisters, older brothers, kind of play that little bit of authority role, but also maybe sometimes, a sounding board of sorts. So prefects are great leaderships or great leaders in our school and our residential program. But yeah, 9th grade dormitories, most buildings that they had 10 to 16 kids, they'll have 2 bathrooms, 1 upstairs, 1 downstairs. Every dormitory will also have a common room. That common room will have, couches, chairs, have a big TV, a refrigerator, or a microwave. We really want dorms to sort of be home away from home. And within the realm of good taste, you can decorate your dorm any way you wish. I think most dorm parents, what we really bug you about is making sure you don't have food out in your dorm. Because if you get ants in your dorm room, we're going to have ants in our houses, and that's no good. So we're not going to make you make your bed every day. But if your parents come and visit, make your bed. It'll impress them. It's a good piece of advice. But yeah, we want kids to enjoy the time in the dorm. But yeah, doubles, smaller style for our 9th graders, and then larger as you move along.
Thank you, Mr. Bala. A couple more testing questions. Someone asked if we could submit an SSAT score from last year, again, with testing issues this year with the process. Absolutely. If you have an SSAT test from last year, you can do that. The next question, Mrs. Dougherty, is can you tell us about religious faith-based services on campus? So maybe talk about our chapel program and then what we offer for kids sort of outside of Hill too in terms of their religion.
Sure, of course. It was mentioned already. So we do have a chapel requirement where we go on Mondays and Fridays. This year, what I loved about chapel was we actually did it by our advisory group. So it's a 6th form privilege to give a chapel talk. If someone wants to do that, faculty can also share something. And so this year when a student, they were recorded, and then we were all able to watch it in our various rooms around campus as advisories. So that's Monday and Friday. We also, this fall as an example, we've always had different services here during the week. We have 2 full-time school chaplains who will offer different services. We also have often different services on the weekend that frankly, it's actually Hill faculty usually who are part of those different places off campus that will bring Hill students. We've also, so this year it was, you know, virtually, and so people were able to continue doing that. We have a spiritual life requirement. I hope someone can help me with how often that is.
Yeah,
Once-
It's
minimum once a term.
Once a term, okay. And so spiritual life can be fulfilled by, you know, attending a service off campus, attending meditation here on campus, one of the morning chapels that our chaplains run. So I love that, you know, it can be as important to you as you want. We have students who help sort of be acolytes in our chapel, and then other kids who just do our chapel program twice a week and fulfill the one requirement. So it's Hill's non-denominational. But I feel like it's a comfortable place to be no matter what you believe in and sort of how much that means you want to pursue, in particular, like a service or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We've got tons of more questions here. We're gonna do this, folks, for about 10 more minutes, just so everyone has an end time. So we'll get to a couple more questions. I'll take this next one. It's what's sort of the culture like to be a day student at Hill? I was touring and meeting with 2 families today, actually, who are day applicants. And I said to them that I've always felt that the best part about being a day student at Hill is the fact that we're a boarding school. Because our day students, that's my go-to line. Our day students can take advantage of the fact that 100% of our faculty live on campus. And it is really a seamless mix between our day students and boarders. And a typical day student day will go from 8:30 when our first class starts till about 5:30, 6 o'clock after classes and after afternoon activities and athletics end. But our day students can stay for dinner if they want. Our day students can then stay after dinner and see teachers for extra help at night. Extra help between our 7:30 and 9:30 extra help time is very much part of the daily life here at Hill, and our day students can take full advantage of that. And I've also said about the experience of our day students is how cool is it that, you know, you can go to school with students from 32 different states and 28 different countries. You know, and it's hard to get that at a day school or a public school. So the experience of how diverse our student body is, and, you know, that is one of the great added values of boarding schools, but also especially at Hill is being around, we've touched on this a little bit, but being around students from all over the world and all over the country. And a lot of the learning that happens at boarding schools, and even if you're a day student, is outside of the classroom. I mean, our academics speak for themselves, for itself, but you know, living and interacting with students from all over the world in dormitories and on the playing fields, and especially at our seated meals and just at our buffet meals, you know, you can't beat that. And you know, that's a big part of the day school experience here, day student experience here. This next question is a good one. Mr. Bala, I'm going to give it to you. This question is about finding the right fit with a campus visit, and then maybe if you're accepted with revisit days. But obviously, if COVID prevents all of these things from happening, you know, how, and families can't travel, what is your suggestion or your advice for families finding that right fit, you know, during this COVID admission process?
Yeah, it's a great question, right? We don't know where we'll be, you know, come springtime, and if we're not able to put on revisits, we were in that spot last year, essentially. So I think we'll have some practice under our belt of doing a good job of really showcasing our community. But I'll give you the same piece of advice I've given to a bunch of families. Whether you have interviewed at Hill already, whether your interview is still forthcoming, the interview is not the only time at which you can interact with somebody at the Hill School, right? Students out there listening tonight, if you're passionate about swimming, you can go onto our website right now and you can email our swimming coach and interact with them about their program. You can do the same in any program and any team. You can find contacts with members of the Hill community that can help you learn about us. And that really is the piece of advice, is it's not just about even just the 4 of us tonight, right? We do this a lot. We help families learn about Hill, but it is all about getting that vibe or instinct. And it's difficult if you can't be here in person, but, you know, really digging down on our website. Amanda talked earlier about the chapel talks. We've posted them on our website. You want to get a good insight on kids at the Hill School? Look at them in that moment and what they choose to talk about. right? For many, it's deeply personal. It's not something like they're not standing up trying to get chuckles in front of the community. They want to share something that's really personal and valuable. So you can really, really get a peek in terms of what Hill is like by things of that nature. But again, if you want to talk to a coach, that coach can probably put you in touch with a kid on their team. You know, if it gets to a point of acceptance and you know, parents out there or families want to talk parent to parent, family to family, like we can help make that happen too. We really want to be an open book. So in the absence of being able to be on our campus and feel it, right, which I think we would all agree is the best way to do it, in the absence of that option, learning more and interacting with as many people at the Hill School is the best substitute. So please don't be shy about asking. Sometimes it, you know, schedules might, you know, delay or make something happen down the line, but we'll do our best to connect you with teachers, with coaches, with program leaders. And like I said, really give you a sense for who we are.
That's great.
And for many of you, you can connect with students as well, and student leaders. We have student leaders that will answer questions from a student perspective, because, you know, we're adults and we have a very different view of things than the kids might actually have. And you want to ask a kid how that experience is, what chapel's like for them. So.
Yep, that's great. Thank you, Dana. Dana, we're going to come right back to you. Another question about weekend activities and just sort of what do the weekends look like at Hill?
Okay, I actually had that question at an interview this morning, and they asked, what's everyone's favorite thing to do on the weekends? And I think when it comes down to it, the answer is sleep. We keep you so busy, but we also make sure to have activities both on and off campus. We'll take trips to New York City or to Philadelphia. We'll take local trips. We'll go to the movies. But what a lot of kids like to do is just be in the dorm with their peers and watch movies and play games, do a puzzle. You know, we keep you so busy during the week that your weekends are what you want to make of them. We're going to give you options, but, you know, you sometimes just choose to do you and your friends, and we're okay with that.
All right, but so Dana, let's give a shout out to Plan B, our duty weekend, okay? So the faculty are divided amongst 4 weekend teams. We have 2 people in charge of our group, Heidi Eccleston and Courtney Neese, who, let's just be honest, Plan B is the best weekend team there is. And the last weekend that Dana and I were on duty, we had a theme of basically celebrating all the holidays that we were gonna miss while our kids are off campus right now, right? So Dana had ugly Christmas sweater bingo. I was running the snowmaking machine for the sort of Instagram worthy picture spot. We had the student band. My job that night was making sure people were standing on their spray painted dots that were 8 feet apart. We had a, you know, New Year's Eve countdown at 10:58 because check-ins at 11 with 3-foot-long sparklers. And because if Dana and I were each having a 3-foot sparkler, we were far enough apart. So, and that was our weekend. So we were, you know, I will say, I think we saw the best of our student activities office this fall because we had to do things differently. And man, we came up with some winners that will carry on, right? And
yeah.
So I just got to give a shout out.
Group B, we're the best.
We'll do 2 or 3 more questions here. Amanda, Mrs. Dougherty, I'm going to come right back to you. There's a couple questions here about the international student experience and, you know, how do we sort of welcome the international students? How many do we have? What's the percentage? But talk a little bit about our international students.
Sure. Well, I like that Tom asked me that because that's one of my favorite parts about this job is normally getting to travel internationally and meet students in their home countries. And part of it, I think, is special to me. I lived in Korea when I was little, and that was a very special experience in my time. So I think I really appreciate families and kids traveling for school like this. But 18% of our students are international. I guess sometimes when people ask me about the experience, I think it's no different than any of our other students. You know, everyone is leaving home, their school that they know, their friends. Of course, for our international students, it's often that they're just much further from home. So we have some great programs like our host family program where they get matched up with a Hill family that is sort of their home, you know, home away from home on a long weekend. but I think all of us would say that in our time here, Hill's gotten so much better about, having different, cultural events, actually one of our things on that weekend, Dane, was an international food festival. So there's this incredible woman, Helen Q, who's our international student coordinator. And she brought 5 or 6 different, sort of restaurants on campus and had a food fair. So I just think, it's feedback from students, what they would like to see, what they're willing to do and share, and then certainly faculty with their interests. But the international students bring such a fantastic depth to Hill that, is so special.
Thank you, Amanda. That's great. We'll do 2 more questions. Mr. Bala, how does transportation work if you are a day student? That's a good question.
Yeah, so if you are not of age that you can drive, then you have essentially 2 ways to get to Hill. Either your own family to bring you, or maybe even a carpool. Although this year was a little different with COVID, but basically getting yourself here. And then for those families who live, I don't know what the radius is. I don't know if it's 12 miles or 15 miles. You check with your school district, and they may have the ability to provide busing. I see the buses on campus, and I see the kids coming and going. So for kids who are not of age, it's really one of those 2 options. For students who can drive to campus, you drive to campus, and we have a separate parking lot. You register your cars. It's a big responsibility. Boarding students cannot have cars on campus. So for the day students to be able to have their car here is something that is a big responsibility, and we make sure it's registered and all of those things. But yeah, one of those 3 ways, I suppose, depending on how old you are, coming and going. And like, Ms. Dougherty was talking about the weekends being vibrant. Be ready to be getting rides to campus on weekends. Day students can take part in every single weekend activity that is offered here. So, families out there who are thinking about their daily commutes, add in some Saturdays and Sundays when your son or daughter will want to be here because this is where their friends will be. But getting to and from campus, I think there's a couple different ways to tackle it. Those would be the most obvious 3.
Thank you, Mr. Bala. Another question is about our boarding day population. I can answer that quickly. Just what's the percentage of boarders? And I can talk a little bit about our boarding commitment too. But we're typically usually in the range of 78% boarding, between 78 and 80%, and then 20 to 22% day. We do have a 1-year commitment for our day students to board. So that's something that's unique in the boarding school world. And I think it makes our culture unique. And I think it makes our culture even stronger and our community even stronger. Typically, the day students will board their 6th form year. It can be any year, but typically that's when it happens. We just feel like, and Hill's been doing this now for 30 years. We just feel like it's an important aspect for our students to go on to college, and whether they live 5 minutes from Hill or 5,000 miles, we want them to experience that boarding environment. So we've always felt that that's really important. And again, I think it really binds our community together. And there was another question about, can day students switch to boarding earlier? And if they want to, sure. And we do that every year, where after a few weeks at school, either mom and dad will throw up the white flag and say, I'm sick of driving and I want my son or daughter to board for the next 3 years, or we'll also, students just want to be part of that boarding experience. So that's something that will accommodate as well. We have some communication that goes out during the year to find out what families want to do for the following year. But that boarding piece for all of our day students is really unique and really, as I said, binds our community together. All right, one last one. We'll do a fun one. Can you, and this is the way it was written, I have to find it again. Can you bring game consoles to your dorm? I've always been afraid to ask this. Mr. Bala, since you're a dorm parent living in a 9th grade boys dorm, you want to answer that question?
Yes, good question. Honesty always goes a long way in interacting with our admission office. So bring all your fun questions when you meet with us. You may bring a game console if you would like, but unless you are a prefect, you can only use that game console in the common room. So you can have them, you got to be responsible with it. And those are, sort of things that you work out with your dorm parent, your prefects. But listen, we have teenagers on this campus. And if we have teenagers here, it means they enjoy playing video games. They are no different than many of you sitting at home. It is a great way to be social. If you are the only kid in the common room playing video games by yourself every single Saturday night, that's going to raise a red flag. But that's typically not what it is. It's tournaments. It's all sorts of games. Kids are, gaming against kids in other dorms. That's fine. That's something that kids like to do. But so yeah, you can bring it with you. But unless you are a prefect, you cannot have it in your room. It would need to be used somewhere else. And then you gain that privilege of being a prefect, and you can have a gaming system in your room. And we hope that then again brings more kids together. Again, it's just one more feature of being here.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I know everyone's probably zoomed out, and I think an hour is enough time. We did get through a lot of your questions. We will reach out to you and answer your questions later this week once we get to all of them, but we want to make sure we do. And members of our admission office will do that. But I hope you've enjoyed time with us. We've enjoyed these questions and time with you. Just reminders again to give us a ring or sign up on our website to get schedule your interview. Again, whether it's through Zoom or an on-campus visit. And we covered what all of those, different things that you need to do the on-campus visit. So, but again, if you have any individual questions, feel free to reach out to any of the admissions officers. And we look forward to reading your applications. The application reading season,
Spell checked.
it's coming upon us soon. So we're really looking forward to that and getting to learn about all the great kids that we have applying to Hill. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight, and happy holidays, and be safe and well.
Thank you.
Bye.